Hello dear learners. Topic for today's discussion is market and civil society in governance. We shall be discussing this topic under following headings: Introduction, Market and Governance, Reinventing Governance, LPG and Governance, Citizen and Governance, Civil Society, Meaning, Characteristics, Importance, Role, NGOs and Civil Society and Governance. Summing up. Now, introduction. In today's complex world of governing, government alone is not capable of coping with myriad problems. A degree of networking with other organizations will enhance the capacity of governance in society as a whole. Also, this will facilitate development of social capital in terms of social groups, agreed involvement and co-sharing of problem solving. The necessity of a continuous adaptation in governance practices is reflected in the changing role and scope of state, the market and the civil society vis-a-vis each other. Students, in today's fast changing and dynamic world, government alone is not capable of handling the governance alone. It also requires the support of other organizations and institutions in the society. Thus, we see that governance is becoming more and more polycentric, particularly in digital era, with implications for how governments, business, voluntary organizations, community groups and individual citizens organize, make decisions and take actions. Now, market and governance. Governance has changed over the last few decades. A shift from hierarchical to a more network form of governance is observed. As we are advancing within phenomenon of globalization, liberalization and privatization, governance has undergone undergone a vast change. Governments across the world have utilized collaborative interorganization and networking form of governance to deliver the public services. There is a great impact of free market economy on the way of governance, which has been described as the new way of governance, government by the market, reinventing government, new public management, sharing power, slimming of state and so on. Now students, governance is the dynamic exercise of management of power and policy. LPG, that is concepts of liberalization, privatization and globalization are increasingly changing the character of state and governance, resulting in minimum of state interference in the lives of the individuals. There is a great impact of free market economy on the way of governance, which is going more and more private. Now, governance implies de-bureaucratization, downsizing, disinvestments, marketization and privatization. Now, students, next is reinventing the governance. The basic principles for reinventing governance are steering rather than rowing, empowering rather than serving, injecting competition into the service delivery, transforming rule driven organization, meeting needs of the customer not bureaucracy, from hierarchy to participation and leveraging change through market. Now students, the basic principles for reinventing governance according to the market economy are steering, that is making through rather than rowing, then empowering the people rather than providing services, then injecting competition, spirit of competition into the delivery of services, then transforming the rule driven organization, then meeting the needs of the people, that is customers and not the bureaucracy, then involving the people, that is participation of the people, then bringing about the change through the market. Liberalization, privatization and governance, LPG and governance. It is based on public choice theory, public management, challenge to state-centric public administration, market as the key determinant, decentralization and democracy, performance partnership, transparency, small government. Students, liberalization, privatization and globalization process have totally altered the boundaries of public governance. Issues arising out of these concepts, that is LPG, have changed the nature and scope of governance. The emerging salient features are, first of all, the application of the public choice theory to the governance. Then emphasis on the public management on the basis of the market model of governance. Then governance paradigm has challenged the state-centric public administration. Governance is not merely governmental, but a design which is both market-driven and civil society induced. Next, the market has become the key determinant of public policy making. Then the decentralization and democratization underlining the participation and empowerment of people at the grassroots level. Then public private joint venture, that is performance partnership based on the joint venture of public and private. Then openness and transparency in the government, that is citizen friendly administration, creating a citizen helping administration based on the openness in the system. Then small governments in term of downsizing, that is reducing, and grassroots people's efforts, that is reduction in the system of the structure of the governance. Next is citizen and governance. As we look at issues relating to governance in the 21st century, the roles of both citizen and governance are undergoing important revolution. Citizen governance is to be seen beyond new public management. The new version is to evolve public policy through the joint effort of public authorities and citizens working in harmony. Democracies are weak without citizen governance. Citizens' participation in governance embodies a shift in the development paradigm from citizens, recipients of development, to the ones that view them as active participants in the development process. Citizen governance is value based and thus must be constructed within civil society organizations. The students, citizens are central to the concept of governance, and they are simultaneously recipients of regulatory regimes and also shape these social environments as well. So, we see that a healthy and vibrant democracy requires a public that is organized for democracy, socialized to its norms and values, and committed to a larger common civic needs. And such a civil public is only possible with a vibrant and healthy civil society. Now, what is this civil society? Civil society meaning and definition. Civil society is composed of the totality of voluntary civic and social organizations and institutions that form the basis of a functioning society. Civil society is normally seen as the site at which most interactions between the state and society takes place. The most important institutional component of civil society comprises of voluntary groups, community groups, cooperatives, unions, associations, self-help groups, social service agencies, etc. Clark defines civil society as collective activities of citizens for purpose of social gain rather than individual gain. Another definition says that it is the space for free association where people could meet and form groups to pursue their enthusiasm, express their values and assist others. Now students, what is this civil society? This civil society is an expression of basic human desire to socialize with others through voluntary organizations. Civil society manifests itself in an almost infinite variety of voluntary and non-profit seeking groups. It is characterized by active participation in public affairs, reciprocal relation, cooperation bonds of solidarity and local associations. It is constituted by voluntary unions outside the realm of the state. Properly understanding civil society, we can say, is a broader concept encompassing all organizations and associations that exist outside the purview of the state. It includes the gamut of organizations and advocacy groups devoted to public interest causes like environment, human rights, women's issues, anti-corruption, election monitoring and various other good things. Labor unions, professional associations like that of doctors, lawyers, engineers, etc., chambers of commerce, ethnic associations, religious organizations, student groups, cultural organizations, sports club and informal community groups all come under civil society. That is, we can say that it incorporates the many other associations that exist for purposes other than advancing specific social or political agendas. Now, what are the characteristics of this civil society? First of all, organizations. They have an institutional presence and structure. Private, they are institutionally separate from the state, not profit distributing. They do not return profit to their managers or owners. Self-governing, they are fundamentally in control of their own affairs. Voluntary, membership in them is not legally required and they attract some level of voluntary contribution of time and money. Now students, the various characteristics of civil society organizations are as follows. First of all, they have an organization, that is, they have an institutional presence and a structural form. Then they are private, that is, they are separate from the state and governments. Next is, they are not profit making or profit distributing agencies or institutions, that is, they do not make profit or return profit to their owners. Then they are self-governing institutions, that is, they manage their affairs on their own. Then next is, membership to these civil society organizations are voluntary and they are not legally binding and they attract all the voluntary contribution of people's time and money. Now, what is the importance of civil society? First of all, advocators of public rights and wishes of the people, fulfills important duties of checks and balances in democracies, works as watchdogs of government institutions, offers facts to the policy makers and suggestions. The students, civil society organizations are engaged in advocating the people's rights and wishes in the fields including health, environment and economic rights. They fulfill important duties of providing check and balances in the democracies by holding the government accountable to the people. Then they are the indicators of a healthy and vibrant participatory democracy. Next, they act as a watchdog by following the political process very alertly and effectively and interfering wherever there is a need. They help in revealing the defects of the system and ensuring that those defects are removed. Then we see that the members of these civil society organizations are professionals. They offer facts and data to the policy makers for the formation of public policies and provide various new suggestions for the improvements and add new aspects to the public policy making. Next is role of civil society. Role of civil society includes representation of the interest of specific groups in relation to government and to the other sectors of society, mobilization of social actors to increase their consciousness and impact, regulation and monitoring of the state performance and the behavior and actions of public officials, development of social action to improve the well-being of their own or other constituencies. Students, civil society organization can play an important role in enhancing transparency and good governance in developing and developed countries by contributing to increase the public debate on issues surrounding the formulation and implementation of government budgets, as well as in supporting greater transparency of public revenues. Now, students, civil society plays an important role in enhancing transparency and good governance in developed and developing countries by contributing to the increased public debate on issues surrounding the formulation and implementation of government budgets, as well as in supporting greater transparency of public revenues. The important role played by civil society organization includes representation of the interest of various specific groups in relation to the government and the other sections of society. Next is mobilization of the various social actors and increasing their awareness and consciousness regarding the various policy decisions and policy making. Then regulating and monitoring the performance of the state and governments and the behavior of various administrators and public officials. Then developmental or social action to improve the well-being of the people of their land and the other regions as well. Now, next is NGOs and the civil society. At the core of much of the current enthusiasm about civil society is a fascination with non-governmental organizations, especially advocacy groups devoted to public interest like environment, human rights, women's issues, election monitoring, anti-corruption and other good things. Such groups have been multiplying exponentially in recent years. NGOs play important growing roles in developed and developing countries. They shape policy by exerting pressure on governments and by furnishing technical expertise to policy makers. They foster citizen participation and civic education. They provide leadership training for young people who want to engage in civic life. Now, students, NGOs, that is non-governmental organizations, are at the heart of the civil society. The number of non-governmental organizations have exploded in the last few decades. There are thousands of NGOs working in collaboration with their international partners, that is INGOs, international non-governmental organizations, for various causes. They operate independently from any government and they work for breeding new ideas, advocates, protest, mobilize, public support, provide services, shape, implement, monitor and enforce national and international commitments. We have examples of various NGOs and INGOs like Amnesty International, Greenpeace, Red Cross Society and many more that work for protection of human rights, environment, endangered species, prison inmates, etc. Next is civil society and governance. Civil society's functional contribution to governance could be as a watchdog, agitator, educator and mobilizer. That is watchdog against the violation of human rights and governing deficiencies, then agitator on the behalf of aggrieved citizens of the land, then educator of the citizens on their rights, responsibilities, entitlements and the government also about the pulse of the people. Then mobilizer of the public opinion for or against any particular program of the government or any particular policy of the government. Then next is contribution of civil society to governance. The contribution of civil society organizations to governance may be summarized under 4 headings. public policy and decision making, transparency and information, enhancing state performance, social justice, rights and the rule of law. Students, civil society can contribute to the governance in the various ways. First of all, public policy and decision making. They can contribute in the field of public policy and decision making because they are comprised of influential and socially dominant groups who are able to organize themselves by virtue of their superior resources and social status in the society, and they are able to exert considerable influence on the process of public policy making. Next, transparency and information. They contribute to better governance by facilitating accessibility of information about the making and implementation of government policy, and in this we can take the famous example of role of the civil society, the role civil society played in the formulation of Jan Lokpal bill in India to deal with the incidents of corruption. Next, they enhance the state performance by working directly with the government in shaping and delivering public services in various ways. For example, in the field of education, health, sanitation, etc. Then in the field of social justice, rights and the rule of law, they press for implementation of existing laws, taking fresh initiatives for making new laws and sheltering individuals threatened by repressive states, defending their rights through a legal process, as done by various INGOs for the citizens of Afghanistan in the recent times. Now, summing up, it can be stated without any doubt that the institutions of civil society are going to play an increasingly important role in the coming years. It is this institution that the leadership of a democratic society is trained and recruited. It is civil society in tandem with the state that tames the market. Without a free and robust civil society, market capitalism will inevitably turn into mafia capitalism. Without civil society, democracy remains an empty shell. So, students, to conclude, we see that civil society institutions are playing a very important role in the coming years, in the years ahead. That is, civil society will play a very important role. These institutions, they will make the democracy work successfully. It is this civil society which works in collaboration with the market, and without a healthy and robust civil society organization, market capitalism will turn into mafia capitalism, which is not favorable for the society and democracy. And we see that without civil society, democracy will remain as an empty shell which will not be able to function properly and provide services to the people. So, students, in today's lecture on market and civil society in governance, we have discussed about the role played by market in governance, then concept of reinventing the governance, that is basic principles for reinventing governance, which includes steering, empowering, injecting competition spirit, transforming rule driven organization and meeting the needs of the customers and not the bureaucracy. Then we have talked about the concept of liberalization, privatization and globalization and how it is affecting governance. We have seen that the process of LPG have totally altered the boundaries of the public governance. The emerging features of LPG which affect the concept of governance, like introduction or application of public choice theory, the emphasis on public management through the market model of governance, then decentralization, democracy and empowerment of the people, then providing transparency and governance and citizen friendly administration. Then we have talked about the concept of citizen and governance, that is how the governance in 21st century is based on the citizens awareness through the concept of civil society. What is the meaning of civil society and what are the various characteristics of civil society, which is composed of various voluntary organizations and non-profit organizations working for the needs of the people that exist outside the realm of the state. It includes various self-help groups, advocacy groups, interest groups that work for the cause of environment, human rights, women's issues and various other organizations. It includes labor unions, chambers of commerce, various professional associations of doctors, engineers, lawyers, etc. Then we have discussed about the characteristics of this civil society organizations, that is, they are not profit making institutions or organizations, they are voluntary organizations and they are self governing institutions. Then we have discussed about the importance of civil society organizations, that is, they perform the important duties of checks and balances in democracies. They offer facts and data to the policy makers for the policy making and suggestions. Then we have discussed about the role played by the civil society, role played for the representation of various specific interest groups, mobilization of social actors, then regulation and monitoring, then development of social action. Then we have talked about the NGOs, which are at the heart of the civil society organizations. There are number of NGOs which have come up in the last few decades and they work with their international counterparts, that is INGOs, for the mobilization and support and advocacy of various causes. Then we have discussed about civil society and governance and the contribution of civil society in the field of governance, that is, civil society as the educator, civil society as the mobilizer of these people, civil society acting as the watchdog and then civil society as the agitator on the behalf of the aggrieved citizens. Then we have discussed about the public policy and decision making through civil society, transparency and information, enhancing of state performance through civil society and the role of civil society in social justice, rights and the rule of law. So, students, we see that civil society is at the heart of the democracy. Without civil society, democracy remains an empty shell. We can say that it is the institution of civil society that is going to play a very, very important role in the years ahead, and it is this institution that the leadership of a democratic society is trained and recruited, and this civil society will work in tandem with state and it will tame the market, because without the healthy and robust civil society, market capitalism will turn out to be a monopoly and it will turn out into a mafia capitalism. So, students, we have seen the importance of the civil society for a democratic nation. I hope this lecture will prove beneficial to all the students of public administration. Thank you for listening patiently.